So your opinion of me is none of my fucking business. I'm Coach Bobby Brown with Sober Life Right. And what I do is I help people that are not using drugs and alcohol to have their most amazing life. And I do this through intense, high accountability coaching, where we focus on making a huge improvement in life in just 90 days. All right. Today, I want to talk a little bit about self-esteem, maybe a little bit about people pleasing, external validation, some of the things that I've learned through my own recovery. I am a man in long-term recovery. What that means for me is that today I am living my absolutely most amazing life without the influence of drugs and alcohol. And it's been that way since July 22nd, 2021. The day before, that's the last time I put any kind of substance in my body. And what I have learned through that process is that self-esteem does not happen on accident. Okay, so maybe give a little bit of the backstory and how self-esteem arose. I believe that we all have like these innate things inside of us that somewhere inside us we know the difference between good and bad. And for a long time, like I hadn't spent any real time thinking about these things. I didn't think about things like values. I was familiar with them. I knew the words integrity. I knew open-mindedness. I knew willingness. I knew these things in kind of an academic sense, but it wasn't something that was definitely wasn't something that was applied to my life. It had no part in my decision making. So as I went through life, I would have these challenges that came up, and at some point I realized that okay, one real good way when I have a challenge and I'm not feeling the way that I want, or I'm not getting what I want, one way to do that was to drink initially, later to use drugs. And so I had this immediate coping skill that would come in and it would make me feel better, or it would make me, I'd lose inhibitions. And so I'd say things that were socially unacceptable, but that would get me my instant gratification, what I was looking for. Okay. The problem with that is that over time, like your subconscious mind knows you're not living with your values, and it starts to seek ways not to be depressed about you not living to those values. And one of the ways it does that is you will start seeking out people that are doing things worse than what you're doing, so that you can see a reflection that will allow you to feel like, okay, well, I'm not that bad. I'm not doing that. And I watched this in my own life, my own active addiction. As you spend more time around those people, there's that old adage, you are going to be the 5 people you spend the most time with. So as you're seeking out these people that you feel validated by and you can feel superior to, now you start to get into their habits and things become acceptable, more and more acceptable that wouldn't have been acceptable before. And I'll just get like real direct on some of this stuff. For me, at my worst in active addiction, I was shoplifting. I was walking into stores and walking out, and I didn't see where this was even a problem. Now, in my defense, on top of all that, I was also crazy at the time. I was using large amounts of methamphetamine. Methamphetamine has a chemical reaction in your brain where it shuts down and hijacks a part of your brain where decision making and impulse control happens. So that is when you've got these dead parts in your brain that just aren't working. It certainly makes it harder to live a life by some sort of values. But I've learned, looking back on it, I can see where even when we start hanging around people that things are acceptable. So we'll use the shoplifting as an example. Even the language changes around it. Instead of what it really is, you're stealing, It became, well, you're boosting, or you're hitting licks, and these weird little terms, this weird little language that makes it seem like it's okay and it's acceptable. The problem is, like, it's like going downhill. Um, you get used to something that's not acceptable, and then suddenly you're just as bad as the people you're hanging around with. Now your subconscious kicks in again and says, oh no, you need to find somebody that's even worse than this to hang around. At the end of my addiction, like, I couldn't stand other men, because the other men I was surrounding myself with, in order for me to feel okay, I had to find such crappy men. And then the more I hung around those crappy men, then it's just the things they were doing just became more and more acceptable. Like, I think about it at the very end, like some of the stuff I was doing, and it was absolutely horrible. So now looking back, it's like, okay, for me, got intervened. I ended up locked up in jail, behind shoplifting. And what happened was I was physically stopped from being able to introduce the drugs into my body for long enough for some actual physical healing to happen in my brain, so that I could make some slightly better decisions. And one of the first things that I did was just recognize that, like, I had to get honest, say, like, I'm not a good person today. So how do you become a good person? And so how that started for me is I had to find role models. I had to find mentors. And I remember being very, very intentional in this. I made a decision, like, that I was going to find 5 men in recovery that I respected. And I'd had some experience with recovery, so I had a little heads up on this. I'd learned from the past. And I was going to look at, okay, how can I spend more time with these 5 people? Because I know that if I do that, if that's who I spend most time with, that's what's going to rub off. And I just started messaging them. And I was at a point of desperation. So there was no fear around it. My life had been destroyed. I had to get it back on track. So I just started messaging them. And I was consistent. I didn't wait for them to message me back. I had nothing that they wanted. I had nothing to give at that point. So I had to take that on myself, that, like, I'm going to intentionally try and reach out. And I'll tell you, out of the 5, like, one of them became one of the 5 that was willing to let me stay in. The others really just kind of, and they're friends, still friends with, so acquaintances with, good acquaintances. But, like, they were doing bigger, better things. They were not going to be attracted to anything that I had going on. The next step in that was to look at, okay, well, what are my values? Like, what does a good man look like? We're talking about self-esteem. Like, let's break down real quick what the word esteem means. And I looked this up about 6-7 years ago, and it was pretty strong for me. So something esteemable is a quality or trait in someone or something that we think is worth emulating. And so emulating means to try and mirror, to try and mimic, to try and do the same things as. Okay. So if I want self-esteem, then I have to do actions. I have to take actions. I have to do things that I think are admirable. It's an easy way to break down. So, like, first off, you got to figure out what's admirable to you. For me, that meant taking some real time, pen to paper, and looking at values and really thinking about it. Like, what do I think a man should be? Well, I came up with things like, I think a man should have integrity. How do I have integrity? Well, I tell the truth even when it's hard. I think that a man should be brave. Well, how do I be brave? Well, I have to be afraid of things. And when I'm afraid of things, I have to do them anyway. I think that a man should be faithful. Okay. So how do I practice being faithful? Well, I have to have temptations come up where there's opportunities for not to be faithful and me to choose not to. Like, make that choice, make that decision. And so by taking this time, and I'm not here to tell anybody what your values should be. Like, I'm a big believer, like, this is your life, but you should probably know. You know, if you don't know what you think a good person looks like, then how are you ever going to be a good person? You know, if you don't know what an amazing life looks like for you, then how are you going to have that amazing life? Are you going to just sit there and, you know, maybe you'll hit the lottery and maybe that'll fix things, but like, it's probably not. That's evidence shows that most lottery winners do not. You know, it's got real high suicide rates for one. We can sit there and we can wait for life to happen to us, or we can take control of that life. So then the next step for me was to take a look at, okay, I've got all these crazy thoughts, and you probably do too. What's going to shape who I am and who I become is not my thoughts, although they play some role in it probably, but it's going to be the actions I take. Okay. So by having these other men, I now have this filter of like, okay, well, if I'm not sure what to do, what would they do? And if I don't know, I ask. Like, that's a hard thing too, asking for help. Like, I feel, oh, I should know it all. Well, fuck no. Why should I know something I haven't learned yet? I've never experienced, I've never done anything with. But I have that arrogant, like, I have this weird thing in my head where I just feel like I should know the answers. So where I'm at today, and I absolutely love the person I am. And I've come to realize that, like, it doesn't matter if anybody else likes me. Like, the right people will be attracted to me. There are going to be plenty of people, no matter what I'm doing, that don't like me. And that's all right. I think that's not... How bad would it be if everybody did like me? I never get anything done. I'm a pretty likable guy. It's hard now. So I hope this helps somebody. Please like, subscribe to the channel if this is good for you. If you're interested in coaching and you want to learn more, just leave me a comment, Self-Esteem, in the comments, or go to my website, soberliferight.com, book an appointment. I would love to coach people that are very, very serious about living their best lives. So thanks a lot.